So in this video, we're going to be talking about one of the strangest and most mysterious peoples of the ancient world, the Minoans, people about whom we know practically nothing, but what we know is strange and beautiful. So the Minoan civilization arises on the island of Crete, and this is one of the most diverse and alive islands of the Aegean. It is not only volcanically active, but it has a fertile ecosystem and is capable of supporting large populations. It is also quite diverse in terms of topography, in terms of terrain, and so the Minoan civilization is scattered across this island in large population centers, between which are broad territories, some of which are cultivated, some of which are left raw to nature, some of which are retained as sacred to the Minoan religion, which we'll talk about in a moment. The central focus, the most important center of population, is Knossos, which has been excavated and which is there for us to visit as an echo of this distant and mysterious civilization. The Minoan people are unknown to us in many ways, in part because we haven't deciphered their language, and their culture was submerged and essentially driven into the ground by the peoples that came later, the Mycenaean Greeks. And there are some profoundly interesting similarities and some even more striking differences. The artwork of the Minoan people seems to reflect both what you would expect, that it is informed a great deal by their situation in an island world surrounded by a tremendously vital sea, and yet it is also fluid. It is also evocative in a way that escapes from some of the formalized and rigid ways in which art is used in cultures that come along later. And so, what we find amongst the Minoans is a tantalizing glimpse at a society that might be freer from some of the conformities of peoples that came along later. Because we don't have their writing, we are left to look at the visuals that they leave behind, and the excavations at Knossos and other places give us a tremendous number of these visuals, and we are left to make sense of them. So, for example, there are many indications that bulls were tremendously important to the Minoan culture, and that there is an interactive relationship with them, including a very literal demonstration of this in what we call bull leaping. We know relatively little about this other than what's presented to us in these visuals, and we don't know whether there's a religious component to this, whether this is a spectator sport that was attended by large numbers of people, whether this was involved in some sort of a coming of age, a rite of passage for young men, whether it was something that was done in some sort of gladiatorial exhibitionist style, and this is one of these places where historians end up needing to remind themselves of the limitations of speculation, the limitations of fragmentary evidence. We can, come up with all sorts of theories, but at the end of the day, we must be cautious in saying much more beyond the what the evidence presents us with. And this includes the importance of bulls, and that there was a practice of bull leaping. We see bulls prominent in other depictions and in other artistic expressions that are often from the upper end of society, and perhaps most strikingly, the bull horns are a prominent motif in religious architecture. The bull horns are often visuals in places and on ceramics and other items that seem to have a religious significance. The bull understandably represents the potency of nature, and is a nice counterpart to the potency of the sea, with which the Minoan peoples would also be familiar. And it's in keeping with this that what we are able to see about Minoan religion is their sacred places are at the deepest places in nature, places that are full of the rawest, unsullied potency of the natural world, that evoke the extent to which religion is designed to provide a means of interaction with the power that the wild has to limit, to create, to destroy. And so in the Minoan world, remarkably, we find a direct expression of this, that religious sanctuaries are found in the most remote, most natural, most unsettled places in Crete and the other islands that they settle on. So we see sanctuaries at the tops of hills, these peak sanctuaries, but also deep inside caves, at the hearts of forests, and religious interaction becomes a progression out from the community, out from the order and structure of civilized society, into the raw chaos of nature. There are some aspects of this idea, when the Mycenaeans come along later and supplant the Minoan civilization, for the most part, their ideas of religion are mapped over onto Minoan culture. The Mycenaeans absorb a great deal of the Minoan society, but only hints and reverberations of Minoan religion make their way into Mycenaean and later Greek world. The singular example of this is, for the most part, Mycenaeans, unlike the Minoans, build their temples to the gods at the hearts of their cities, and have a different kind of interaction between the human and the divine. But one of the most sacred and awe-inspiring places in the Greek world is the oracle at Delphi, and the oracle at Delphi is underground, deep into a difficult to access cave system, where the separation from the ordered and structured world of human society is palpable, and where the priestess is engaged in communing with the god Apollo in a way that is literally and figuratively a separation from the human experience. And so, even though the Mycenaeans have a different culture, and the Minoans are left to become a fractured memory, some element of this representation of religion as the raw potency of nature survives into later eras. Another thing that's remarkable about the imagery that we have in terms of religion is that there is a great deal that is that seems to indicate female deities and female priestesses. Once again, we can't go too far to speculate beyond what we're able to see, but this is in some ways in keeping with the identification of the power of the divine with the raw potency of nature and the chaotic world of the wild. And so it is the nature that gives birth to life, and so is in some way inherently feminine. The later ancient civilizations have some representation of the earth goddess. The later Greeks have a representation of this as Gaia, and so forth and so on. But these tend to be more remote from the immediate male and female divine powers that are directly interactive with the world around the Greeks. For the Minoans, there seems to be again a more raw connection to nature as a force that creates life, and so we see a number of different of glimpses of this without being able to see too much more. The Minoan civilization has a writing system, which, as I mentioned, both the writing system and the language it reflects are still opaque to us. We don't even know what the Minoans called themselves. Minoan is a name that we use that has nothing to do with the civilization on Crete itself. It's opposed after the fact via the Greeks that came later. And I should emphasize again at this point, in case it hasn't been brought home to you, the Minoans are not Greeks. This is what the ancients called an autochthonous civilization. That is to say, they seem to come from where they are. The Greeks, they seem to arise out of the ground and are innate to the place that they arise from. The Greeks arrived later, and they arrived from the north, and they arrived with their own Indo-European baggage. The Minoans are already there, and their language is unrelated to any other human language, as far as we can tell. And their origins are separate from all of the other Mediterranean peoples that we can identify. And they become a successful civilization. The Minoans flourish on their island of Crete. This is one of the things that seems to be emblematic of the ancient era. That there is a drive to not only develop civilization but to perfect it, and in the Minoan case, they're doing so in an economic way. To build the strongest, most prosperous society that they can. The way that they go about doing this is to create what they call palace cities. These are highly centralized, highly organized, and very, very carefully stratified, very carefully organized, very vertically class-based living and production facilities. This is a place where not only the people are living, but where the engine of the economy is driven and controlled. What the city of Knossos, for example, is producing is directed by the people at the top, by the king. What they are purchasing, the raw materials that are being generated, the entire economy is being carefully planned and organized and escalated in order to provide increasing power, increasing wealth, increasing ability to ensure future strength and prosperity, and to increase the standing of the Minoans in the surrounding world. And the even even thousands of years later, the city of Knossos is still a testament to what the Minoans were able to accomplish. What we're seeing here is one element of a larger story of the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age involves industrial import-export growth process. And because it's based on bronze, it ends up having a number of distinct characteristics. So first of all, bronze is somewhat difficult to produce. It's a technology that must be mastered through years of honing of the craft, and so. And the secret of how exactly to produce strong and beautiful bronze is not known to all of the peoples of the Eastern Mediterranean. And so you end up with those who are bronze powers and those who are not. And the bronze powers become more and more powerful, and there becomes a wider and wider gap between those that are economic powers and those that do not have that same economic capacity, those that are being left behind. And the problem with bronze is bronze requires both copper and tin, which means that you must control two different kinds of natural resources, and these are things that are often, not found in the same place. Requires you to go further and further afield. More and more of these raw materials is being required in order to produce, in order to meet the greater and greater demand for bronze tools, bronze weapons, and bronze luxury items. And so this is an economy that drives itself more and more to find, each bronze power requires more and more raw materials, requires more and more control over where those raw materials are coming from in the lands surrounding the Eastern Mediterranean. It requires more and more markets for these goods further and further afield, and so as a result, these Bronze Age powers become some of the first experiments in large trade empires. And by the time the Minoans are becoming strong and powerful, they are doing so alongside the other Bronze Age powers, the Hittites in Anatolia, the Assyrians in Mesopotamia, the Egyptians to the south. And so this is the Minoans are part of this what is increasingly becoming a global economy, and all of this is poised for the arrival of the game changers in the Aegean world, the Mycenaeans, who we'll be talking about in the next video, and that's that.